He has an incredible history of working on DLT technologies before blockchains were cool. And so with the first question, with your 25 years inside just fund operations, when you look at on-chain asset management, what's the single biggest gap in where you see the infrastructure today and where it needs to be? And what will it take for institutions to see it as superior versus just new and novel?
Okay. Good afternoon here in Cannes, or how we say here, bonjour Cannes. And thank you, Charles, that you make me a little bit younger than I really am. So it's 27 years now that I'm in the fund industry, but okay, it's a long time. So I'm really let's say, the traditional asset servicer, the traditional banker. And yeah, about the infrastructure and the gap that we see currently, you have to know that we will adopt blockchain and we will adopt on-chain asset management. That's for sure. So blockchain is there to stay. But all the asset servicers, and I'm coming from Luxembourg, so it's one of the biggest fund industry in the world, number one in Europe. And the thing is that the infrastructure is quite monolithic. So we have very heavy legacy systems, a lot of Excel sheets, spreadsheets under these legacy systems, and a lot of human power. And we are experiencing, we are implementing, and we are analyzing to integrate on-chain management on that, but we cannot take out the monolithic block one by one and replace it by another one. So the gap is simply in timing, analyzing the different activities that we have on the value chain, and to see what are the immediate activities that we could put on chain or that we could digitalize. So I'm working on this already more than a year or nearly 2 years now, on analyzing all the activities of the value chain, which is quite segregated, but put it into one monolithic legacy system, and to see who are the best providers in the market for us to replace one by one the different activities and to put them on chain without replacing immediately the full legacy system. And we are doing this step by step. Tokenization is a topic for us, for sure. But tokenization is not the ultimate goal today, because it doesn't make sense, in fact, to tokenize an investment fund when at the beginning of the value chain, my investor still needs to fill in 20 pages of an application form. So we need first to digitalize the investor identity before thinking about putting all our investment funds on chain.
Oh, that's really interesting. So, I mean, if you had to choose one area, whether it's custody or a regulatory breakthrough or even like a specific protocol or blockchain, which piece do you think is the first to unlock the actual institution adoption, or which piece means the most to you in terms of what you're building?
From my point of view, from my personal point of view, you mentioned all the ingredients that are there and that we can use. But it's difficult for us currently to use them all together and to create our perfect value chain, okay? So I will take them one by one. The regulation is there, and the regulation is strong, okay? So I'm coming from a country where we built it already in 2019, the first blockchain law. We were in Europe the first, together with Malta, having blockchain laws before MiCA. And I was around the table for consultation of this blockchain law. So I have seen all the 4 blockchain laws in Luxembourg for consultation before MiCA. And in fact, MiCA is just regulation on top of all the others that are already there, because we can tokenize, we can create on-chain management, asset management, with all the regulations that we have already on the ground, on the foundation. You have AML, we have MiFID II, we have payment directives. They are there, and these are the foundations. We put MiCA now on top to say who is allowed to do what. Okay, so regulation is very strong, and we can use it. It's just a question of interpretation of the regulation. And I'm experiencing currently a case in my bank where discussions about a tokenized money market fund, for example, create a lot of discussions on that point. But the regulation is there strong. You talked about protocols. Protocols or standards is something that is very, very difficult for traditional institutions because we don't have the knowledge. Well, there are some guys that can discuss about it. So I am 3 decades in the traditional finance and 1 decade already in blockchain. So I have my connections, I have my sources, I can work with them. But when I go to my, let's say, to management level or to top management level, they always tell me, Patrick, we don't understand what you're talking to us. Okay, so you are in a kind of a galaxy and we are still in the village. So we don't talk about protocols. So, but we onboard companies or we discuss with companies who fully understand it, who can, and we trust them. Okay, and then you touched a very important point, and which is for me the holy grail of the future of finance, which is the custody. And the custody layer, I call it the digital custody layer. And this will change for me, in fact, the full value chain of an asset servicer. Because I am particularly working in the transfer agency department. There is also, you have the depository department, you have fund accounting. And in fact, the digital custody, this will be the single truth in the future of the finance industry, not only for investment funds, because on the digital custody layer we will put everything on it. We will put results that are coming from different modules that have digitalized things into this layer, and this layer will serve later on the regulator, it will serve the auditor, and it will serve, of course, the business lines. So this is really something that is becoming urgent to look at for us, because, for example, in Luxembourg there have been in February 2 so-called FAQs issued by the regulator. So regulator is very smart in Luxembourg. They are not only issuing regulation, they are also issuing FAQs. That it's easier for them because the interpretation of them is on our side and not on their side. But what is the essence of the FAQs? First, in Luxembourg, asset managers are not now allowed to put 10% of the NAV for UCITS funds into, so indirectly into crypto assets, and private market asset managers can put 10% directly into crypto assets, which will change a lot of things for us because our infrastructures are not ready for that yet. And the second and more important FAQ for me was the FAQ about stablecoins, because the regulator, through this FAQ, allows now that subscription redemptions into a UCITS fund can be done by stablecoins. And this is something, I say there is an urgency for us, and I said it last Friday before coming to Cannes to my top management, that we need urgently to see how we can now create this infrastructure, because the day will come that our investors or our clients will come to us and say, hey, I want to pay now with stablecoins.
I mean, speaking of stablecoins, the term institutional grade gets thrown around a lot, I would say, and it usually means it's just like a permission system with whitelists, user controls, and many other things. At what point do you think creating these institutional grade products is kind of against the purpose of building on the blockchain in general, and it just becomes a glorified, expensive database?
For this, you have to see the wording, institutional grade, or the term, in 2 different ways. And it was when I've written posts and articles about this topic. And for me, institutional grade is not only the code. Okay, it's not the protocol, it's not the infrastructure, it's not the software. This is one thing, of course, and a lot of builders have used this word just to put them on their website and entering into meeting rooms with traditional finance institutions to discuss with them. Okay. We look for core, of course, we look at the products and we will see if they have a kind of institutional greatness, you know, to see if the protocol is in line with our internal rules in the bank. This is one thing. So this is about the code and the technology. But for us, what is more important is the builder or the company itself. If this company is institutional grade, and what does it mean for us? There are different criteria. So first of all, we look at the governance model of this company. So we are very open for startup companies, that's for sure. But you have to understand, when you have a startup company and the grandmother is the only shareholder of the company, it's kind of a problem for a traditional finance institution to work with those builders. So we look really to companies that have a governance model, that have an org chart. We look at financial statements. So we analyze DeFi companies like a traditional company. It goes through a due diligence process, and there we define if the company is institutional grade or not, meaning if it fits into our internal rules. That's all.
So, I mean, on a similar note, like you had mentioned, I think it was 2016, your first project, Onchain. Yeah, it was one of the earliest deployments of like a chain-backed fund subscription model. What assumptions, when you were building it then, have changed or have become obvious now over the years?
That's a great question. No, because you touch a really important point of my career, which was back into 2015. That was the starting point of blockchain for me. I was at that time, in fact, director at PwC. And the only persons who talked about blockchain were, in fact, the guys in Bitcoin. That was it's a fact. And it was also at a management meeting of PwC that we invited a startup company from Luxembourg called Onchain. They are still in the industry with an AML compliance software, very known. And they were on stage and talking about blockchain, Bitcoin, things like that, in front of the whole management, partners, directors group of PwC Luxembourg. And so Bitcoin was far away for us. And but I immediately saw a potential in the technology itself. So I went to my partner and said, we will analyze this technology if you can use it in the asset management industry. So we started a project, an initiative. I was the project manager for this initiative with 8 asset servicers in Luxembourg, with big names, Société Générale, ING, BBH, HSBC. And we took Onchain as our tech provider or tech advisor, and they built it with us, in fact, the first smart contract for an investment fund transaction. And those guys had no clue about the subscription into an investment fund. So I remember a very funny story that I was with them in a meeting room of their company, explaining how works a subscription into an investment fund. And it was 4 p.m. in the afternoon. I left the room, I went back to my office, and I said, guys, I come back at 9 p.m. tomorrow morning, at 9 a.m. And at 9 a.m. In the morning, they showed me the first subscription on an Ethereum test chain. So that was great. And then we continued the initiative. To shorten the story, we had at the end, we had a full pilot for subscription and redemptions on dummy funds. So we were the first initiative in Luxembourg having a subscription on blockchain. There was a parallel initiative called Funds DLT, Well, the guys always tell me, or they tell publicly that they had the first transaction, but when I am out for lunch with them, because we are all friends in Luxembourg, they tell me, no, Patrick, it was you. And we wrote a white paper. Now comes the important part of my answer, because we wrote a white paper about the initiative with all the results. So, and then we tried out of this white paper to continue the initiative, but well, it stopped at one moment because the participants were called back by their headquarters to make own initiatives, but okay. But in fact, everything what we wrote in this white paper at that time is what I see live today. And this is important. It was a little bit our crystal ball that we had. So we detected, in fact, some showstoppers to say in 2017 or 2016, 2017, okay, we go live with tokenization of investment fund. Because we were missing at that time the cash layer. We had no cash layer. Today we have stable coins. So we can today combine a stable coin with a tokenized money market fund to create the killer use case. That was not possible at that time. At that time, we had no distributed AML KYC. But we put this in the white paper. It's all written down. And yeah, it's for me, I'm a little bit proud to see what we have written there, because everybody told us you are crazy guys. I remember that I was on stage and there were people from the regulator in front of me, and they were telling me, Patrick, this will never fly. Now when I meet them, they say, hey, yeah, we're right. And that's great.
Yeah, I mean, that's an incredible foresight. And as we approach time here, with that foresight, what do you foresee for everyone in this room who's building towards the future of infrastructure for institutions or just DeFi and whatever? What do you think is the area that's most needed to pay attention to, or like the biggest opportunity? And like, it could be something like custody or non-custodial, or risk standards and risk scoring frameworks for institutions to understand these asset classes better. What's top of mind for you for people to focus on?
The most important for me is in fact the convergence and the bridging of the DeFi world and the TradFi world. It's not about which product, which protocol, or whatever. It's really, and it's important to see events like here in Cannes. I was last year here. I saw more techie people than today, because it's amazing to see here now that there are also a lot of institutional people that I haven't seen last year. And all the conferences I'm on stage, I always see half of the room is institutional and half of the room is DeFi. So now they don't talk necessarily together. And this is very important for me. It's a call to action for all the Web3 guys that go directly to traditional financial institutions. Don't make some pass-through through contractors, introducers, things like that. No, go directly to them and try to make some partnerships with them. So what we are looking for in the industry is that, for example, we want to do proof of concepts. This is how it works today. We will not, for example, for myself, my technique is not to do long RFPs with 180 questions, but I want to see how could it work in my architecture. So let's do proof of concepts together. Don't call me now today, everybody, okay? Because I have no time for everybody. No, but engage with the industry. So I think that it's not DeFi wins or TradFi will win. We will be all together in the next generation of finance, in fact.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. As someone who's built protocols in DeFi for the past 6-7 years, I wish retrospectively that I would have built alongside institutions instead of building a protocol and then trying to fit it into a circle, into a square peg. So. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you for your insights, and thank you all for listening.